I work night security at a small-town high school in Indiana. It's not a fancy place. The building's old, with creaky floors and dim hallways, but it's been home to the town for generations. Most nights are quiet. I do my rounds, check the locks, stare at cameras, drink bad coffee, and wait for morning. It was a Wednesday night, cold, late January. I was on hour 4 of my shift when I noticed something strange on camera 3. That's the East Wing hallway, the oldest part of the building. Nobody ever goes there at night. All the classrooms down that corridor are unused and locked, but the hallway lights were on, and they're on motion sensors. I leaned in closer to the monitor, squinting at the grainy black and white feed. Nothing moved at first. I figured maybe a rat or a bird flew in and triggered it. That's happened before. Still, protocol said I had to check it out, so I grabbed my flashlight and key ring and headed down. The school was dead silent. You don't know real quiet until you've stood in a school hallway at 1 a.m. surrounded by student lockers and faded class photos. The kind of silence where even your heartbeat feels loud. When I reached the East Wing, the lights were off again. I paused. If the motion sensors had been triggered, they should have stayed on for 5 minutes. They always did. I turned the corner slowly, flashlight sweeping left to right. Nothing. Just rows of closed doors and dusty tiles. I stood still, listening. Then I heard it, a faint scraping sound, like something dragging across the floor. Not walking. Dragging. It was coming from room 112. That room's been sealed shut for years. I approached, every step slower than the last. My hand shook slightly as I reached for the door handle. Locked, of course. I jiggled it to be sure. Then the scraping stopped, and something tapped once against the door from the inside. Just one sharp knock. I froze. For a solid 30 seconds, I just stood there, breathing like I'd just run laps. My brain was racing through explanations. Janitor, animal, malfunction, anything to make it make sense. But there was no way someone could be in there. That room had been boarded shut since before I started working. The windows were sealed, and I had the only key to the east hallway. I backed away slowly, my flashlight still pointed at the door. No more sounds came from inside. Just silence, deep, pressing silence. I radioed in the incident, knowing damn well dispatch would just log it and forget about it by sunrise. They always did. Back at the security office, I rewound the feed from camera 3. I wanted to see what had triggered the motion. At 1:06 a.m. the hallway lights flicked on. At 1:07, a shadow passed by the door of room 112. It wasn't a person. I know what a person looks like on those cameras. You can always tell by the way they move, the shape, the head, the legs. This thing moved wrong. Like it glided more than walked. It had no clear shape, like smoke in a vague human form, just drifting from left to right, pausing in front of room 112, then disappearing out of frame. I watched it again, then again. Every time, my stomach dropped a little more. The next night, I told myself it was nothing, just weird camera noise. A trick of the light. Maybe condensation on the lens, anything to avoid the creeping feeling in my gut. But at exactly 1:06 a.m., the hallway lights turned on again. I stared at camera 3, dreading what I might see. There it was. The same shadow-like figure. This time, not just passing by. It stood still, directly in front of room 112, facing the camera. No face, no features, just a distorted black mass, like someone had smeared ink across the screen. I swear it was looking at me through the lens. Then, the feed glitched. Static. And for one full second, the camera showed room 112's interior. That's impossible. There's no camera inside that room. But I saw it. A dim, gray space with broken desks, a blackboard half rotted off the wall, and something in the far corner. It looked like a person crouching, arms wrapped around their knees. But they were twitching. Violently. Like a puppet being yanked around by invisible strings. Then the screen went black. I ran to the hallway with my flashlight. This time, I was ready to see something. Anything. And I needed to prove to myself I wasn't going insane. Room 112 was cold. Not just cold, freezing. The air felt heavy and stale, like a basement that hadn't been opened in decades. There were fresh scratch marks across the door, and written in black marker, just below the doorknob. 5 words, "You see me now, don't you?" I quit the next morning. Whatever's in that room, it's still there, watching. And every once in a while, I check the school cameras online. At 1:06 a.m. the lights in the east wing still turn on. I used to work the night shift at a 24-hour gas station just off Highway 19. Most nights were quiet. A few truckers, the occasional drunk college kid, and long stretches of nothing but humming refrigerators and the buzz of cheap fluorescent lights. The cameras were always on, for little screens above the register showing the pumps, the aisles, the parking lot, and the rear alley. One night, around 2:15 a.m., I was restocking the cooler when I heard the ding from the front door, the motion sensor that goes off whenever someone walks in. I came out with a crate of sodas and looked around. No one was there. I checked outside. The pumps were empty. No cars. Weird, but not impossible. The sensor was old and sometimes tripped for no reason. I shrugged it off and went back. Then, maybe 5 minutes later, it dinged again. Still no one. But this time, when I looked up at the monitors, my stomach twisted. Camera 1, which faced the pumps, showed a man standing just outside the entrance, like he was frozen mid-step. His face was turned slightly toward the glass door, but the image was blurry. He wore a hoodie, baggy jeans, and what looked like an old military duffel over his shoulder. Only, he wasn't moving. At all. He just stood there. I blinked and looked out the window. Nothing. The front was empty. When I looked back at the screen, he was gone. I rewound the footage. There was no glitch. No jump cut. He just appeared, stood there for almost a full minute, then vanished. No walking away. No car. Nothing. I stepped outside. The air was still. The road was quiet. No sign of anyone. Back inside, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe someone pranked me, or maybe the camera had lagged and I'd missed them walking off. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. At 3:03 a.m. the motion sensor dinged again. I was staring at the monitors this time. He was back. Same man, same stance. This time he was closer, right at the glass, almost pressed against it. But his face was still just out of view. Blurry, like the lens couldn't focus on him. I looked toward the door. It was empty. No shadow. No reflection. I even walked right up to the glass and looked outside. Nothing. But the monitor still showed him standing there, right where I was, facing me. I waved my hand. No reaction. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the monitor, but the image came out black, like the screen had been off. Then, the ding again. I turned fast. This time, the sound came from the back entrance. Camera 4, the alley, showed the man again, now behind the store. Still not moving. Still no clear face. I didn't wait. I locked both doors, called my manager, and told him I needed to leave. He thought I was having a panic attack and told me to take a break. When I checked the footage the next day, the man wasn't in it. Not once. No glitches. No figure. Just me, looking confused and scared, waiting at the door. I know what I saw. I know what the camera showed. And I know that since that night, every time I pass that store, I feel someone watching from behind the glass, even when it's closed. I work night security for a corporate office building downtown. It's a newer place, all glass, chrome, and motion-activated lights. My shift runs from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I'm usually the only one in the building. There are 28 cameras covering every hallway, lobby, entrance, and conference room. I spend most of my shift watching them from the control room on the first floor. It was about 2:30 a.m. when I noticed something off on camera 12, the feed that shows conference room be on the 5th floor. The lights were on. That's not normal. They're motion activated and shut off after 10 minutes of inactivity. The building had been empty for hours. I watched the screen. No movement. Just the usual long table, 12 chairs, big wall monitor, and the city skyline through the window. Then, out of nowhere, one of the chairs pulled out a few inches. Slowly, deliberately, like someone was about to sit down. But there was no one there. I switched between other camera angles to see if maybe someone had entered the floor and wasn't showing on that feed. Nothing. All other rooms were dark and empty. I looked back at conference room B. Now 2 chairs were pulled out. One at the far end of the table, and one to the left, as if 2 people were sitting across from each other. I grabbed my flashlight, took the elevator up, and headed to the room. Every part of me wanted to turn back, but I needed to confirm it was a malfunction. Maybe a cleaner forgot to reset the lights or someone came in after hours. When I got there, the lights were off. No movement. The chairs were all pushed in. I entered slowly, sweeping the room with my flashlight. Everything was in place, but the temperature was off. This room was colder than the others, and it had that weird stillness, like the air hadn't moved in a long time. My radio crackled softly, which it never did on that floor. I backed out, turned the hallway lights back on, and returned to the control room. When I pulled up the camera feed again, 3 chairs were pulled out now. I rewound the footage. At 2:41 a.m., a shadow appeared at the far end of the table, not entering the room, just fading into view. It had no features. It sat down, and that's when the chair moved. Then another one joined. Then a third. They sat, facing each other, like they were having a meeting. For several minutes, they didn't move. Then, simultaneously, all 3 turned their heads toward the camera, and the feed cut to black. The system reset itself an hour later. No logs. No errors. No footage of what I'd seen. But the next morning, when the staff arrived, someone found a handwritten note on the whiteboard in conference room B. Meeting concluded. Same time tomorrow. If you made it this far, Maybe you belong here? Subscribe to Whisper Cage, more true horror is waiting.